this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. You either live by the gun, or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And Chris.
Yes.
I do declare there has been a murder in the closet.
Merder.
Hobbs has become tired of Charlie's shit and has smothered him.
One of these days that might actually happen, and I will laugh a little bit on the inside.
She almost did once, and it's adorable.
Well, this week we are talking about a completely different style of murder. We're talking about the queen of murder, the queen of crime, Agatha Christie.
Merder.
Specifically, Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, which was turned into a movie twice.
3 times, actually. I found a 2010 one.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
I did not either.
Good. So we're going to focus on Murder on the Orient Express, but as with all things Agatha Christie, there isn't really a way to just isolate it by itself, because this is a whole world that I think you're fairly new to, the fun times murders, correct?
I am extremely new to this. As we discussed, my side of murder mystery is way different than...
Yes, a little bit closer to last week's movie.
Yes.
This is totally my alley. I live for quaint murder mysteries. I'm running out of TV shows. BBC, make more. I need more. I am definitely a huge fan of Agatha Christie. I've read as many books as the library has of her. So when this movie came around on our list, I was very excited.
Yes. And specifically, we're focusing on the 1974 version.
Yes.
Which...
the superior version.
Yeah.
Not to throw shade on the acting of the 2017 one, but the plot is a little closer to the original book and the intent of the character, I think.
And to be honest, as well known as these movies and Agatha Christie is, I've kind of really only known about them through name and mention every now and then. I never really got around to it until this year when I watched both of them.
Yeah, and being part of the, what I like to call fluff murder mystery genre, if not maybe the the original version of this, with arguably maybe Sherlock Holmes being truly the original, but she definitely fully expanded on this world. I feel like the main grasping point for this genre is having relatable characters and recurring characters. So while yes, this is a movie, we're focused on the 1974 one because we feel like that one's a little bit closer to the book Poirot, which is the Poirot then that everyone is trying to copy in all of the TV, the movie, the radios, everything. First off, as someone who isn't into the fluff murder, how did you like the plot of this one? Because I picked Murder on the Orient Express for a reason.
I've been thinking about it a bit. Like, I enjoyed the movie, I enjoyed the plot. It's just the whole super over-the-top smart guy who connects everything that kind of annoys me and makes the audience feel like an idiot for not connecting everything.
Yes, I will say that is something that is another theme to these, and I think Agatha Christie is probably one of the best examples of this style of writing. You're given a ton of clues so that you can put your own assumptions together, but you will never have enough information to truly solve the murder yourself.
You are the owner of the Orient Express. He did it! Next scene, she did it!
Yes.
That person did it. They're in conspiracy with them.
Yes, and Murder on the Orient Express is a good example of kind of the extreme end of her writing. It was kind of a shift in the writing focus of having, either a ghost person who it's not possible for them to have murdered, which Sherlock Holmes touched on it a couple of points. And then her more common one was having this mass of characters and then picking one who was probably the least likely and Scooby-Dooing your way through it.
Yes.
And those, I think, if you know how she writes and all that, you can probably pick out the murderer, and you can guess most of the time and be lucky. Murder on the Orient Express, not to spoil a over 100-year-old plot, I think. Everybody did it together. And that was kind of a shifting point in the idea of murder mysteries, I think, because up until that point, it was always one person. And while murder mystery loves the psychology of killers, they're not interested in the real psychology of a killer. They much prefer the fairy tale version of that psychology. I think it's gotten darker in recent years, especially with shows like NCIS and Criminal Minds, who kind of fall into the murder mystery genre, if not a little bit more true crime side of things.
Well, and I think that ties into the availability and ease of access to information nowadays.
Oh, definitely.
Because for me, my style is more along the lines of like Seven or recently the Fritz Lang film, where it's more about the psychology of the society and the inefficiency of the police, which is kind of an interesting tie because Orient Express are trying to avoid getting the police involved at all.
Yeah, and that's another thing that these murder mysteries all seem to have in common. Agatha Christie definitely spearheaded this, and then I also think Sherlock Holmes was another example and starting point of this was, and I don't really understand why, but all of these things have the same in common, that the police, for some reason, are incompetent at their job.
Yes.
Which I don't understand that logic, but okay, we need a detective, so all of the police are no good at their job in this mystery universe world, and thus we need to solve it ourselves. Who better to solve it than the smartest person? Or, in the opposite end, her other most popular character, Miss Marple, the most connective person.
Which, I was reading last night that Poirot is in 33 novels.
Yes.
That's impressive, because she wrote 66 detective novels.
She did. Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot were by far her two most well-known and loved characters. I think towards the mid to late part of her writing career, she actually preferred Miss Marple. She was definitely one of those writers who made these characters into living people who she had to live with. And about halfway through, she was known to say that she hated Hercule Poirot, that she found him insufferable and an absolute prick. But the people loved him, and so she kept writing him.
And that's kind of my point. That's my thing is I don't like Poirot.
No.
I didn't like him from the very get-go because, he's this imposing,
strange little man.
Almost American.
Yeah, for him being
stereotypical American.
Yeah, especially more nowadays. He's supposed to be a Belgian who's constantly confused as a Frenchman, but he's living in London, because this is post-World War II, I believe.
Yeah, well, I've also run into that too. I was watching a movie called The Ordeal, and I knew it was a Belgian movie, and then they started speaking French.
Yes.
And you kind of forget that that's one of their main languages, and so I can see why that's...
Yes, and I think it is kind of a fun quirk, because especially for the audience who know and love Poirot, especially the TV show, which I know you haven't gotten around to yet, but don't worry, I will get you on it. It's so good.
I have such a hard time with TV shows. I've started 3 and I haven't touched them in a year.
I like these ones, especially murder mystery ones, because for the most part you don't need to watch all of them or even any of them in order. You can just pick up one and watch it like you would a movie and then forget about the series for a while and then come back to it.
Okay.
That's part of the reason why I like this genre so much, actually, is because each one is an individual plot. It's its own murder, it's its own mystery. And while there might be an overarching theme running throughout, a good example would be Merder, She Wrote. There's town plot that overarches the whole show, with sheriff leaving, the doctor going on and doing things in his life, the townspeople having their own problems and stuff that over the season might get solved. But you don't really need all of that. You can watch each show individually, and you can skip large quantities of the show and really not miss a whole lot. And I think that's part of the charm of it, of the genre anyway. Yeah,
and I mean, I like murder mystery, I do.
Yeah, I think you would have connected more with a Miss Marple. Mostly because, while Hercule Poirot sits on the end of the scale of kind of more Sherlock Holmesy, where he's very intelligent, he puts things together in a logical format, but you're not given the tools to put it together the same way he is, and it's on purpose. But Miss Marple, on the other hand, solves things in a completely different manner. She solves things because she'll see someone and go, oh, you remind me of my cousin's sister's best friend from childhood, and thus you are the murderer. And that's completely ridiculous, and I think you would have enjoyed her more.
Yeah.
But arguably she's not as popular as Poirot.
Yeah, and I think my understanding, because I'm sure this was some of your early introduction to murder mystery.
Oh, definitely. I think Murder, She Wrote was one of the first ones I watched, and I loved that show.
Whereas my side of it, I come from more of a Alfred Hitchcock style. Where,
and it's very different. You're given all the tools in Alfred Hitchcock. You're supposed to solve it with him.
Yeah, where he talks about it in one of his presentations or lectures, I don't know exactly what it's from, where he doesn't want to make the audience feel stupid at the end for not connecting these little tiny things together.
Yes.
And he gives the example of a bomb underneath a table and two men talking about baseball. You just show them talking about baseball and then an explosion. That's all there is.
Yes.
But he's about building that suspense. You show them talking, then you cut to under the table and the bomb. All of a sudden, that talk about baseball is trivial compared to the overarching everything.
Yeah, and the fluff murder mystery is definitely more of the opposite end of the scale, where it's definitely more about the interactions, the characters, and a little less about the actual death that has occurred. Like, most of the time, like, it's treated very much like a Scooby-Doo mystery, where, yeah, someone's dead, but it's fine, we got time. No one's really that upset about it, except for maybe the grieving widow, who might have done it. So it is a much more, I don't know, less, I mean, it's still a mystery, it's still a murder mystery, but it's definitely more of a drama than it is a true crime.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, a lot of people seem to have liked because Miss Agatha Christie is on the Guinness World Record as being the best-selling, what was it? Best-selling...
I think it was a novelist.
Yeah, best-selling novelist of all times. She's had 2 billion copies of her work sold.
Jesus.
I think that puts her, and like, it's always hard to tell, but I think that puts her third in books sold. I think it's, I don't remember. There was a couple, Bible was one of them, something else, and then her. Which, you know, good on her. Her full name, which I didn't know this until I did my research, is Dame Agatha Mary Garcias Christie, and she was named Lady Marrowan. So she was highly, like, people, and it wasn't just, you know, at Guinness World Records, she was also given the title of Grandmaster Award for the Mystery Writers of America, which is their highest award in 1953. Like, she did very well for herself in this writing career.
Especially as a woman at the time.
Yes.
And not just a woman, like, she didn't use any pseudonym or use her husband's name. She used her name.
She did. There's some argument that maybe there's some books out there that might be hers that she did write under pseudonym, because she did disappear for a little bit.
She disappeared for 11 days.
She did. And there's some theory that she, in those 11 days, had some books published that she had wanted to write, but didn't. But no one actually knows, because she claims she had amnesia.
She did write 6 romance novels under the name Mary Westmacott, I think.
Yes.
But, I mean, even on top of that, not only did she write 66 novels, 14 short story compilations, and the longest film, or no, it's not the longest film, the longest running screenplay.
Yes.
She's had 30 films made from her work.
Yes, and that's one of the things why I picked this movie was because we've got the 1974 version, which is by far my favorite. I love the characters in it. Everyone's so over the top. The costumes are way over the top. The train is beautiful. But
that was what the Orient Express was at the time.
Yes, and the Orient Express you can still ride, apparently. Like, the train that this whole thing is based around.
It closed down last I saw in, like, 2016.
No!
Like, it closed in 2009, and then it reopened for, like, a few months, and then it shut down again.
My dreams!
Yeah.
Bummer. Maybe it will come back, because that does seem to be a common theme with these. But, the train is over the top, elegant, and lavish. The characters are all over the top and almost cartoony in the way that they are described in the movie and shown in the movie. And everyone is given just enough of a time to give you a backstory without, like the 2017 version, being physically told their story. Hi, Charlie. Do you like murder?
I hoped you wouldn't be coming here because we're doing this early.
Oh no, Charlie time. So I guess compare, and you watched the 2017 version as well with us. That was we watched the older version separately and then made the whole friend group watch the 2017 version. The entire time of which one of our friends was vigorously attempting to figure out what was happening and was very angry that he did manage to figure it out because I think he'd already heard the story before.
Well, he'd heard a version of it because this has been done so many times and reproduced.
It has, and there's a lot of things that took this like the anime Baccano. You can totally see how there's some connection that could be made there. I think he's seen parts of that.
I tried finding it.
Is it difficult to find nowadays?
Now it is. It's been taken off all streaming services.
Oh, no, it's so good. If you ever get around to watching Baccano, it's a fantastic gangster murder anime. So fun. But the 2017 one, while wonderfully acted, the actors did a phenomenal job. It was missing some of the quirkiness that makes Agatha Christie's characters shine.
It was a little too serious, I would say, is what it was.
It was very serious. And everyone in the original and in the first movie, they're given ties to this murder and motive for the murder without having to over-explanate it. And then for some reason, the 2017 one adds more motive for everyone.
Yeah, and then the dude tries and kills Poirot, and it's like...
Yeah, it was very strange. It was beautifully shot.
Yeah, no,
It was a gorgeous movie, and if you've never seen this story before, it's not a bad watch. I watched it in theaters, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I liked the filming of it. I really liked the end shot. I thought that was beautiful.
Did you catch how the end shot of them all at the table is a recreation of the Last Supper Jesus painting?
I did not.
Oh, hold on. I gotta show you this.
Well, while you're looking that up, I have a question. So, you said that he was described as egg-shaped.
Yes, multiple times.
From my research, it's his head that's egg-shaped.
Yes, his head is like an egg. In almost every book, he is described as having an egg head.
I'm not convinced in the 74 version he has a neck.
No, I'm not sure that he does either.
You never see even an inch of his neck. His collar is all the way up to his head.
Yes. And so there's a very heated debate in the Agatha Christie world on who's the best portrayal of Poirot. Because he is a hard character to play. Especially with how much detail we're given about him. He has an odd accent. It's kind of French, but he's been living in London for quite a while. The time period is kind of a difficult one to pin, because it's been so theatricalized that getting a true 1930s-esque feel can be kind of hard to do without making it cheesy. And he's supposed to be weird. He's a little oddball man. He has some very OCD tendencies in the book, but he's not so bad as in the 2017 movie. Like, that's a little bit far. His mustache is described in great detail. But also not. It's just enough for you to know that he has many, as they say, mustaches. Because I think I don't know, it's always pluralized. It's gotta be a Britain thing. We don't pluralize mustache here. One mustache on your face, not mustaches.
Because I think it's how it's divided on the lip. Because you have one mustache and another mustache.
I hate it.
Yes.
I hate this terminology, but it cracks me up every time.
Well, it's like hair and hairs.
I guess.
I'm getting a haircut. Hair is one little hair.
I guess. I don't know. But, so he is a hard character to play. So a lot of people are debating which one's their favorite. My current favorite is definitely the BBC TV production of Poirot. I don't remember the actor's name off the top of my head. But he was by far my favorite. But that also could be because he was on TV for so long playing this character, and he clearly really enjoyed his role.
Yeah.
He clearly is having a great time in every episode. He's done interviews explaining how he enjoyed his role, how he got into it. And you can really see the passion he put into that. And I think that shines through, and that's why I like him.
Yeah, it's kind of like everyone has their favorite Sherlock, which I'm more familiar with the Sherlock, the two Sherlocks I've seen.
The two Sherlocks, yeah.
And, I mean, they both have their qualities. Like, I like Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock.
I like how gritty he is. I like the oddballness of him. Mm-hmm. He is a fun Sherlock.
And I like Benedict Cumberbatch's, too. He seems a little too extreme for modern society, though.
But I kind of like how far out he is.
Yeah.
And that's a very good analogy. Like, Poirot is very much in the same, like, which one's your favorite? Because my favorite Sherlock is the old TV Sherlock, or arguably the radio Sherlock series from, like, way back in the day that was sponsored by a wine company, and they kept having to sneakily put in advertisements for the wine.
Oh, that is great.
I love it. The ads are nothing like they used to be.
Yeah. No, I've been down a rabbit hole lately of, like, old 50s ads / propaganda films.
And for some reason, the ads and propaganda films, knowing that sort of stuff really does kind of add to this world, because it is very 1930s, especially the first one. All of the sets, the costuming are all over the top, very dramatic, but not so much that...
Oh.
Do you see it now?
Yeah. That was one thing that annoyed me, especially at the end of the 2017 version.
Yeah.
Is when he reveals, oh, you're this person. She gets up and removes her wig.
I didn't like the wig.
Why?
But I also didn't like that she took her wig off, fluffed her hair a little bit, and still looked gorgeous. Like, when I put a wig on, I don't look that good after I take it off. But okay.
I'm sure Brian thinks you look lovely.
I don't think Brian's ever seen me in a wig.
Really?
I don't own very many.
Oh.
But, the 2017 one I liked, but the whole film is shot in kind of dark grays and browns and blacks, with the occasional pops of color here and there on certain people.
Which is kind of weird because the Orient Express is the like symbol of decadence.
Yes, it was supposed to be incredibly lavish. Oh, excuse me. Especially from all of the like YouTube videos I've watched of people showing off what it's like to ride on it even more recently. It still looked incredibly beautiful. Lots of gold and red and beautiful mahogany-esque looking wood. Gorgeous.
Yeah. And I think it's just a sign of like the times and how movies are changing, because people do go towards that more grittier style of film, like the Sherlock movies. Yeah. But at the same time, those are set in lower end London.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be bleak.
And I think that's another reason why, if you're going to pick between the two movies, I think the original older movie is probably a good one to start with, because it's not shot that way. It's shot, it gives you a better explanation of the precursor information you need to appreciate the murder and the crime, the death of this child and the kidnapping and all that brouhaha.
And the other thing I feel it did better was emphasize the fact that Poirot wasn't supposed to be there to begin with.
Yes.
Like, all the people on the car, the reason the car's packed is for this revenge.
Yes.
And in the new one, they're just like, okay, yeah, here's a room.
Yeah, it was a little odd how that was kind of glossed over. And I liked how the original did a good job, too, of setting where in the world they were. The new one kind of lost where the train actually is, and where all of the passengers had just come from.
Yes.
Which I think helps add to this 1930s luxury feel. I don't know, for some reason, I very much wish to travel back in time to 1930s Britain and then go on an Egypt cruise. It seems very lavish according to the movies. I'm sure it's actually not.
For the rich it was.
Yes, a rich 1930s person.
Because back then, Cairo was like the place to go on vacation for a wealthy Brit.
Yes, and that whole air and flair is very much supposed to be part of this movie. And so I feel like the original one does a beautiful job of illustrating that with all of the luggage that people are bringing on, what they chose to wear, as opposed to the new one, which, yeah, sure, we're snowed in halfway through the movie, but...
Okay, that was one thing I didn't like in the new film, is that they go out of the train for quite a bit of time.
I don't understand that either.
And
stay in the train.
Yeah, on top of that, there were these rich socialites who...
Yes.
They wouldn't do that.
Well, apparently the inspiration for the blizzard hitting the train was from a real event that Agatha Christie read about. When the Orient Express first opened in 1928, there was a blizzard that got them stranded for 6 whole days, which to us now doesn't sound too bad. Like, yeah, that's bad, but, like, we'll be fine. It's okay. Back then, like, food is running out. Like, we've got to be very worried about this. There is no radioing for help.
And I do have to say one thing. You told me the train was not important to the movie.
Okay.
The train is hella important to the movie.
They're
on the train almost the whole movie.
Okay. So when we started this, Nicho had no previous knowledge of this movie or story whatsoever, and so he informed me that he was going to start watching train movies to ready himself for it, and I had to adamantly explain that the train is not the main character.
I wish I had watched more movies surrounding trains, but work kept me from watching movies.
Don't worry, you have the rest of the week to watch train movies to your heart's content now that this is over. No, the train is the set of the movie. I definitely agree with you there. And that's part of the reason why I like the original one, is because we did get to see quite a bit of the train. We get to see different rooms and carriages. We get to see quite a bit of the dining hall, which is nice. Especially for people like me who, I'm never going to get to ride on the Orient Express, let's be real here. The best I'm going to get is Amtrak going from here to Chicago.
Actually, I was thinking about it. So, I wonder how much of a movie or if this movie even played at all an inspiration for, like, Snowpiercer. Because I did watch Snowpiercer, at least.
Of course you did. Yeah, it is kind of an interesting thing, because this movie points on the importance of being stuck on a train and the events that can happen from that, the overdoingness of the murder and the mystery and the whodunit part. There's a lot of things that one could say this is inspiration for.
Well, and I've started stumbling upon movies that take place in one room for the most part, or...
Yes, that's a very common, like, fun trope to play with. The whole impossible murder.
Or like, The Cube.
Yes, which I think you could argue The Cube is a more extreme version of the impossible murder. Just, everybody did. Yeah,
everybody. Who done it?
All of them.
Nearly did it. Yeah, no. And I mean, I can definitely see the influence of how this story and her style of writing changed the detective novels. Because from my understanding, it was very much Sherlock, Alfred Hitchcock. There's been a murder committed. You have absolutely no clue, and you're going down the rabbit hole trying to solve it. Whereas this is like, we're going to throw everyone together. Play nicely.
Yes. I would say that this really started a whole new wave for the murder mystery world, because from this you could argue we have things like Clue and Whodunit.
Which I wanted to get to Clue so badly.
I love Clue!
I haven't watched it yet.
I love that movie so much. And that's arguably from her and her murder mysteries. I also would argue that maybe the murder or the mystery point and click games are also taking inspiration from her and her works. The over-the-topness, the whodunit, the absolutely unrealistic flow of the plot, while enjoyable and incredibly entertaining, is all over the place at times. But that's part of the charm.
Yeah. And I will say, I did enjoy the film, don't get me wrong. I just don't enjoy the overflow of information.
This one is definitely the height of overflow of information, because she was attempting to tackle what not very many people had tried before, which was to get all of the people on the train both to be the murderer, but also be innocent in the murder.
Yeah, and it's such an extreme murder. Like,
it is.
Such an extreme revenge.
It is. And I do kind of wish that you had had time to read the book, because in both the movies we're given the background information rather upfrontly.
Mm-hmm.
Which you have to do. There's no visual way to have done it the way the book did. But in the book, you're not told about the murder of the little girl right up front. That information is sprinkled throughout the book as you go.
Yeah.
So it's even more, it would have angered you even more, because there's no way you could have known all of this. But the flow matches a little bit closer to, instead of being a constant barrage, it's more of a constant...
Yeah. Which is kind of an interesting thing, too, though, because not only is she tying into stuff she knows...
Definitely.
Because the train, she'd been on the train multiple times.
And she says the passengers from the train were from a separate trip that she took where she was waiting for inspiration, and she watched the people get on the train, and several of those people, she jotted notes down and turned them into characters for this.
And it also tying into the real life event of the Lindenberg, or Lindbergh? Yeah, Lindbergh kidnapping.
Yes, which back in the day was kind of all over the news, if I remember right.
Oh yeah, no, this was hot news because they were celebrities of the time.
Yes. I guess a way to equate it would be like the Manson murders nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
That level of news, press, and outrage.
But I also kind of question, and maybe the book does a better job of it, but what proof are we actually given that he's the killer, this guy that they've been hunting this whole time?
That is glossed over. I know they cover it a hair bit better in the book, but I don't remember.
Okay, because the whole time I'm watching this, they're just saying, he's this person, he was here, he had threatening letters sent to him. That could all just be a ploy. Like, they could... I understand people getting together for it, but, like, and if they all convince themselves. But this is how conspiracies start. Very
much so. And I will say that if this had been brought to just a standard court with the information provided, a very strong argument could have been made for, is this person actually the kidnapping man?
It's highly circumstantial, like the West Memphis 3.
Yes. However, I think in the book they do a little bit better job of getting the reader to believe that this person is the kidnapping man, and also explaining that he was a serial kidnapper that was known to kidnap rich kids and then ask for ransom, and for some reason, in this instance, he killed the little girl as opposed to returning her like he had been, I guess.
An accident. That's how you start serial killers, too.
Yes, yeah. But also, I don't know, she does a really good job of making all of the characters both very likable, but also I kind of hate everybody on this train.
Oh, I do, too. They're all dickheads.
They're all pricks. But that's kind of part of the act, I guess, because it kind of always leads the reader or watcher to question who it is, which I think is another common trope for this genre, is you kind of are always led to pick whoever you hate the most and kind of want them to be the murderer, which is horrible, and you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, that's kind of the human nature of this sort of thing. And
I watched a movie, I don't know if you've seen it or not, really, really good, In the Heat of the Night.
I have not. But I have heard about this movie. I watched it last night for the first time, and it is probably one of the best murder mystery movies I have ever seen. This is Sean Connery, right? No, that's... Which one? Who's in this one, then? Whose face am I thinking of? I don't know. Because I've seen clips from this movie, In the Heat of the Night. Because I have been told multiple times that I need to watch it. You do. It is on Amazon right now. But I have been told that this is one on the list. Okay, yes. I highly, highly recommend you watch this movie. They did a fantastic job. I was looking up Connery just to see where Murder on the Orient Express tied in with James Bond. Just like how old he was. I could see how you would. Because the next movie we're watching with the guys is Diamonds Are Forever. Ooh, a good one. Mm-hmm. Or... From what I've heard, it's the worst Connery film. That's why I like it.
I forget that you really, really enjoy garbage movies.
I love garbage movies. I will say that, though, this is one of the movies that is arguably less garbage that I love dearly.
Mm-hmm.
However, the genre could easily be put in that, as my favorite TV show of this genre is one called Rosemary and Thyme, about two ladies who are really into gardening, who go through a hard time, start their own gardening business together, and murder just follows them everywhere they go, and they solve the murders using gardening knowledge. And it's so bad, but I love it so much. It's so quaint.
I just realized another good whodunit movie.
Which one?
Hot Fuzz.
Yeah? Okay, that one does qualify.
Everyone did it.
Everybody did it. Well, and it is fun to see how far this genre has gone, because it did start off relatively seriously. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Sherlock is arguably supposed to be taken very seriously. The idea of logicking your way through a murder using minimal clues, and just knowing that there is more evidence in something than there actually is,
Mm-hmm.
which has potentially screwed with our sense of investigation, or at least from a civilian's point of view. I'm sure actual crime investigators are like, none of this is realistic whatsoever. Yeah. You can't do that to paper, but that's fine. And Poirot,
I honestly forgot about hat boxes. Those were a thing.
Those were a thing. And we've gone from very serious, and arguably Poirot is less serious. She does have a lot of fun with the characters, even in a more serious one like Murder on the Orient Express.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of very fun, quirky bits to lighten the mood.
Well, and I think that comes from, she said later down the line that even though she disliked Poirot,
she did. She hated him.
She understood she was an entertainer.
Yes, and I think that was one of the things that set Agatha Christie apart. She started off writing for her own fun and because she loved it. And then once she got going and saw the public's absolute love and devotion to her characters, she didn't necessarily, I think, feel the need to just put out whatever. She still took time to get to know the characters and see how they would react in the scenarios she was setting up for them. But she also didn't let them die just because she wasn't super in love with that character anymore. She still found a way to make the characters in the books something that she enjoyed to do. Granted, though, it was by introducing side characters who she liked arguably quite a lot more. Poirot has a best friend, a colonel, who is a reoccurring character, who I think I read somewhere that she enjoyed him much more, because he was supposed to be kind of the Watson character, but even more normal, plain, and kind of slow.
And from what I read too, instead of
Sir Conan Doyle?
Yes, Sir Conan Doyle. I can't speak. We're doing this too early.
We are.
My mind's not ready for this.
I have my coffee.
In Sherlock Holmes, he killed him off because he was tired of him, whereas Agatha Christie killed off the Colonel. Because, so that way she didn't have like, okay, this character is going to show up, or this character is going to show up. No, that character is dead. He can't show up again. And
the other thing that I very much liked about Agatha Christie was she did give Poirot in the books not a full life. I think in the books he lived into his 60s.
Okay.
And when he died, Poirot was one of the only fictional characters to make it the front page of the Times for him having an obituary. That's how loved this character was.
That kind of makes me think, because we've scratched it. I have seen a third Sherlock.
Yeah.
Sir Ian McKellen. Yes. Dan Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting one, because he's playing this aged Sherlock.
And I think, and she did a very nice job of, while Poirot, for the most part, throughout his career, doesn't necessarily change too much, she does start to hint later on, and I think Orient Express is later on in the Poirot career, if I remember correctly. And so she does start treating him like he's aging. She does a very good job of making her characters, while quirky and over the top, they do feel like real people.
Yeah, and
granted, people that she hated, but very realistic people.
And I like that, because I've talked with Elliot about it before, and I mean, with games and stuff, we'd like to see a progression of time and showing characters aging.
Yeah.
But I know that's harder to do in a long series of games rather than
and she
a
always
novel.
And she always did it very elegantly. If I remember from the ones that I've read, it was never a main focal point talking about, for most part. There's always exceptions, and especially once he was very late into his career and she was ready to retire him. He would complain about, oh, the arthritis is hurting me, or I'm a little slower than I used to be, or not today, I'm tired. But it was never aged like how some of the, especially video games, and the murder world, or the mystery world, do this quite a bit, that I've found, is we start off very young, spry, and able to do everything, and then we, like, immediately shift to old and in a wheelchair and unable to do anything. Like Batman. Batman's a good example of how, if you think of the, like, over quick arch that we grew up with as a kid, we started off with very spry Batman who got beat up quite a lot and probably should have been hospitalized a lot more than he really was. And then we kind of, there was this shift in our childhood when Batman suddenly was in a wheelchair and an old man, and there was all of the Robins and other Bats who were now doing his legwork. I know you didn't grow up with the cartoon like I did.
No, I didn't. The only one I can think of is Batman Forever.
Yeah.
Where it's, like, set in, like, a future cyberpunk kind of.
Batman Forever.
Yeah.
Well, and I know in the real Batman arc, it's not quite that jarring, and but that's kind of how it feels with her character. Is she did a wonderful job of aging Poirot. I would say Miss Marple doesn't age like Poirot does, because Miss Marple starts off very old. But I think that's another variation she made in the split, because we do see that kind of nowadays with the TV show murder mysteries. There's kind of two ways to look at it. We've got the overarching ones where everyone ages, they go through their career, they retire, new people come in. I think very specifically of, like, NCIS, where we did watch everyone age and go through their career in a relatively normal sort of stance. Like, people did retire and actually leave the show when they looked like they were at retirement age via the script. And then there's other ones that people just kind of keep going forever, and you kind of worry about them. Y'all okay?
It makes me think of a movie I've been trying to get around to, Boyhood.
Oh, yeah. Where
they actually use the same actor through the 7 years of his life.
Yeah. 'Cause, I don't know, her ability to get these characters realistic does show very nicely when translated into movies and radio. And even, there's a stage production from 2017.
I did see a mention of that. And there's been, like, TV shows, not just in American Britain. I mean, we've seen them in India, Japan.
I very much want to watch the Japanese ones. They look so good. The main character that I saw had a wonderful mustache on a very Japanese man, and it was the full French mustache. It was gorgeous. I very much want to see it, because he also had the smirk. Oh, I want to watch that show. It looks gold.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing about the time we live in now, is that this stuff is more readily accessible.
Definitely.
One thing I do want to talk about, and, like, how this movie's aged so well, or just the story in general has aged so well, I would say the ending is key to that. Because
definitely.
If you believe that he is this kidnapper and killer, I don't fully buy into that.
Too late, he's already dead.
Mob mentality bullshit. But what I think is that it's the moral question at the end of, when is murder justified? And
I would definitely agree with that. And I think the other part of the ending of this that makes this one and another one of hers, which is And Then There Was None, which I do hope that sometime we'll get around to it, because there's a beautiful TV adaptation of that one that I've watched. And both of these, and she's very good at this, play on the idea of, A, when is murder okay? And then from the audience standpoint, when do you want to spoil that ending for your friends? Because while, yes, it's not terribly difficult to guess an ending for this and be right, because you do have a limited number of characters, and they very rarely Scooby-Doo you where it's someone that you've never heard of before. it is fun to watch other people get frustrated figuring out who it is, because once you know who it is, there are little signs and clues that you're like, of course, you never would have gotten it, but that's the idea, that's the point.
And the one thing that, here's what bothers me a little bit with it, is this guy is supposed, especially with more so the murder, I think they're all guilty of murder because they
murdered someone? Yes, I do think that qualifies you as guilty of murder. It's when you murder someone.
Murdering an innocent person. Because the one guy says he's been working with him for, 1 or 2 years at that point?
I don't remember. I feel like in the book it was a little longer than that.
Okay.
But, back then, everyone would be like, I've only worked with you for 5 years, and nowadays it's like, I've been here for 5 whole years.
Well, they talk about that the whole time he's been with him, he's been more of his translator.
Yes.
And that he didn't know any languages.
Yes.
So, I think the first dead giveaway was when they say handkerchief in French. Or, wait, what did they say in French?
They say all's fine, it's okay.
Yeah, they say something in French, and he's talking about, like, he doesn't know languages very well. Yes. Which, to be honest, I know a lot of people aren't fluent in all the languages, but like in Europe, it's very common to be bilingual, especially if you're rich and you were well educated at that time. Yes. French is one of those important languages. And if you're just some scummy businessman that they've framed to get their anger out, that's where it started losing it for me a little bit, and that like he was receiving threatening letters because they were sending it to him. Of course he's gonna have them because you're the ones planting the damn evidence. Yes. Yeah. But it does make a good argument for, let's pretend like this is definitely the guy who kidnapped and killed this darling little girl who, regardless of whether or not this was a famous murder like it was based off of, and the public outrage that it caused, all of these characters were supposed to have had a real connection with not only the little girl, but they make a very good effort to explain how murder doesn't just affect the immediate person, which I think was something that hadn't really been discussed in the murder mystery community up until around this. I'm sure a couple have gone into it more, but it wasn't brought to the public's full attention to think about the fact that, the mother suffered so much that she died. Her unborn child then, of course, died. The little girl who was murdered obviously died. The husband then, in grief, died. The person who was accused incorrectly of the crime then died. And all of their families are then grieving for these people who they are so close to because of the death of a little girl. Yes. And so it does bring an interesting light to that concept of there's never just one casualty in these sort of instances, which is an interesting light to shed in the murder mystery world, because normally, yes, we have the grieving mother and family, but it's never talked about in a very wide-sweeping way of how impactful someone's death can be. And it's overarching in, there's another concept, and it deals more, I guess so, with war movies. And in war, it's the women and children who suffer the acts of men. Yes, and I will say that is something that Agatha Christie's writing always has in the back of its mind. She did help in World War II in the hospitals for part of the service. And that's how she got to know poisons, and like that was one thing that was, they were like, you nailed this because you know how this poison works. She worked in a pharmacy in where she definitely learned, and she was an apothecary's assistant. She was a very intelligent lady who used all of her knowledge to fictionally kill people, which is terrifying, but I love it. And her realistic, people didn't just die in her books. They were killed, which did bring even more realistic aspects to these deaths, because while she never did describe the deaths in a gruesome way like what you're used to seeing in your murders and your mysteries, she never killed anyone in a way that
was so unbelievable that there's no way. Like, some of the more recent murder mysteries for funsies kind of sometimes do.
Yeah. They did a fantastic job with it. I mean,
and she always did a very nice job because she balanced that line of a dark subject in a light and humorous way. She was able to connect with, I think, a larger audience. Because if she had gone your dark, gritty route, especially when these books were written, which was over 100 years ago for some of them, 100 years ago, a proper woman or lady or child would not have picked these up. That would have been too dark if we had gone into depth about the death and the murder. Instead, she focused it on the people, which then let her have a larger audience who could connect with her and her books.
Yeah. No. I'm kind of curious to see what the next remake will be like, because it's been a while.
It has, and the TV show, while still fresh in a lot of people's minds, the TV show is done, and the actor who did such a wonderful job, he's retired from that.
And there's a new one started up that you didn't know about.
I know, I'm so excited. But she wrote a lot of stuff, and while most of it has, at some point, managed to be turned into a TV or radio show or something like that, or Audible books, which is now the new version, I think, of radio acting. Because the audiobook I listen to, it's not just read to you. Everyone does a voice, and there's background noises, which is a lot of fun. I like the old radio show style.
Yeah.
I am interested to see where this genre goes, especially in American TV, because a lot of our current murder mysteries toe the line between murder mystery fun times and true crime.
Yeah.
And the true crime world is arguably much darker and grittier, but they keep trying to have the recurring characters like the murder mystery world does, which is fun and all, but I'm kind of worried about those fictional characters needing therapy real bad. Stuff keeps happening to them. They need a break.
I do actually, after watching these movies, I understand why you got really excited for the trailer of Knives Out.
Yes, now you get it, right?
Now I get it.
Because I think Knives Out is the next fun play on this genre, and I am excited to go see that one. I might even be willing to go in person to the movie theater for that one.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, I think, is when that one's coming out.
Yeah, I think it's a Thanksgiving murder, because, nothing brings the family together quite like murder.
I mean, my dad and I talk about this stuff. I mean...
Well, and I will say that the arguable current TV show adaptation, King of Quaint Murder Mysteries, is BBC. Because nothing's, especially to Americans, we find the British small town village murders very quaint.
Hot fuzz.
Yes, actually. Because we don't really have anything quite like that here. We have small towns, and they are quaint, but not in the same sort of sense. We typically don't have the same level of dreary fun times that they seem to have in these TV shows in Britain, which I'm sure is not a full, accurate presentation of life there. There's a lot of people dying. I think the population would have come down by now.
Yeah, and even then, that kind of life is quite different. When I was living in Germany, I lived in the countryside.
Yeah.
And I lived in a small burg. So, we had a baker that my mom would walk down to and get fresh bread, but it's not much different than daily life, honestly. We just have this romanticized version of
very much
what country life is like.
Very much so. And I have been interested in seeing, there's been kind of a sweep of new shows making their way to easy access media, especially thanks to Netflix. And it seems like we are seeing a revival of this romanticized, more recent history, murder mystery style stuff, which I'm really excited for, and I am very excited to see how the rest of this goes. I would very much like for them all to get the next season. I need more.
Yeah, I just have a backlog of movies to get through still.
Yes. The other thing that I always talk about when things get cult classic level, which Agatha Christie is arguably above cult classic, she is just classic at this point, but especially with some of her smaller stuff, is how many adaptations and redones. And we've talked about the radio, we've talked about the books and the movies, and the numerous TV shows, and the adaptations to Japan and India, which love it. There's also a video game, which I think is the pinnacle of knowing how you made it, is when they make a video game about your book and movies. I haven't played it yet. I have no idea what system it's for or anything, but in 2006, there was a computer game made of the Orient Express. I'm sure there's others based on it, but this was the one that I could find, and I'm very excited to attempt to get my hands on it to play it.
Yes. Well, Chris, what would you rate this movie?
This movie is, I think, something that, and we always talk about how we watch stuff with friends, because that to us is a good time, is getting everyone together for this. But I would argue that while this movie is great to do as a group, especially if you have people who haven't seen it and don't know what the ending is, and getting them to try and guess it, this movie is also really fun to watch by yourself.
Yeah.
So I would say this is a definite watch. I even put it in my rewatch category. This is the third time I've seen this movie. This is the second time I've seen the 2017 version, and arguably I didn't even like the 2017 version very much. But I would still watch it. I kind of want to own it. I would definitely watch the 74 version again. Yes, I think you would have liked the old TV adaptations of her work as well. I kind of wish I had done a little bit more research and maybe found a DVD with interviews or something. Yeah, that would have been really nice to have seen how the actors felt about it. But I ended up going down a rabbit hole and finishing the Outlaw Gangster movies. I understand. I didn't have time to do that either this week. But don't worry, I will get to it. No question. I will say, if you want another fun adaptation, we talked briefly about her disappearance. There's a Netflix fictional adaptation of a much earlier work done in 1979 about her disappearance and how she goes off and solves her own murder mystery while she's been disappeared. I did see that pop up for me. I thought when I first clicked on it, I thought it was a documentary about her life. Disappointingly, it is not, but it is a fun, very quaint, very stupid murder mystery that is a lot of fun. Yeah, I ended up watching In the Heat of the Night instead of that. I understand. That was probably a good choice. Get around to that one. That one is so good. Yeah, this one, I wouldn't say it's, a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but I will say, this is a definite watch for me. It is a rewatch for me. Mm-hmm. And I will also say that this movie in particular is a rabbit hole where I will start on this one and I will just continue down until I have seen all of them. And if you like this sort of quaint genre, there is a lot to get through and there's a lot to watch, listen, and read, which I think a lot of people really enjoy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. Thanks for listening. Peace.